My name is Bert. I'm 34 years old, and I come from a family where my German grandparents once baked with passion. My parents abandoned that tradition for practical careers, but I couldn't ignore the flour in my veins. After 7 grueling years of building my bakery from nothing, working 100-hour weeks, living on a cot in the back room, and finally paying off every loan, my family suddenly appeared. My brother, flanked by my parents, demanded half my business. Family deserves partnership, they insisted, having never cracked a single egg alongside me. Before I tell you how I handled this family betrayal, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to protect something you built with your own 2 hands. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Milwaukee, Wisconsin shaped my understanding of family dynamics long before I understood what that term meant. Our modest 2-story home on Maple Street represented exactly what my parents believed in: practical stability without unnecessary flourishes. My father, Howard, worked as an accountant for a local manufacturing company, bringing home steady paychecks and constant reminders about financial responsibility. My mother, Diane, sold real estate, her commission checks bringing occasional celebrations when the market was good, and tense dinner conversations when it wasn't. They were practical people who believed in practical careers. My older brother, Nathan, was the family golden child from the beginning. 4 years my senior, he inherited my father's head for numbers and my mother's smooth-talking abilities. By high school, he was already investing his allowance in stocks, while I was spending mine on cake flour and vanilla extract. When Nathan announced his intention to major in finance, my parents beamed with pride. The path was clear. He would follow my father's footsteps into a sensible, respectable career. The dynamic in our house was predictable. My father would discuss investment opportunities with Nathan while I sat quietly at dinner. My mother would introduce Nathan to her successful clients' children at community events while I stood awkwardly in corners. It wasn't that they didn't love me, they simply didn't understand me. And in the Keller household, what couldn't be understood was treated with suspicious caution. The bright spot in my childhood existed outside our immediate family home. Every Saturday, Mom would drop me at Grandma Eleanor's small house on the other side of town while she hosted open houses. Those Saturdays with my grandmother became the foundation of everything I would eventually build. Grandma Eleanor had emigrated from Germany as a young woman, bringing nothing but a handful of family recipes and unshakable determination. Her small kitchen smelled of yeast, cinnamon, and possibility. While my parents saw baking as an impractical hobby, Grandma saw it as connecting to our heritage. "Your great-grandfather owned the finest bakery in our village," she would tell me while guiding my small hands through the process of kneading dough. People would line up before dawn for his brötchen. The way her eyes lit up when describing the family bakery planted seeds in my imagination that would take years to fully bloom. Under her patient guidance, I learned to make traditional German pretzels, stolen at Christmas, and her famous Black Forest cake that made neighbors invent reasons to visit. More importantly, I learned that creating something with your hands that brings others joy is a form of love that can't be calculated on a spreadsheet. When I turned 12, Grandma gave me my own apron with Baker Burt embroidered across the chest. My father rolled his eyes when he saw it. "Mom, don't encourage this. He needs to focus on math and science if he's going to get anywhere." Grandma just winked at me behind his back. At home, I began experimenting with recipes in our kitchen, saving my allowance for special ingredients my mother didn't typically buy. I'd wake up early on Sunday mornings to bake cinnamon rolls, hoping the delicious smell would soften my father's perpetual disappointment. "All this mess for what? Donuts we could buy at the store for $2, he'd grumble, even while eating a second one. My mother would quietly clean up after me, occasionally murmuring that they were delicious, but never directly contradicting my father's assessment that my passion was frivolous. Nathan was more direct in his dismissal. "Playing with flour is for girls," he said once, grabbing a roll from the cooling rack. "But at least your weird hobby makes decent snacks." That backhanded compliment was the closest thing to encouragement I got at home. In high school, I joined the culinary club, the only boy among 7 girls, confirming my family's gender stereotypes about baking. When I won the state Young Bakers competition my junior year, with a contemporary take on traditional German apple cake. The local paper ran a small feature. My parents didn't attend the competition. Mom had a big listing that weekend, and Dad never missed Nathan's basketball games. When I showed them the newspaper clipping, my father glanced at it and said, "Just don't let these distractions hurt your grades." Grandma Eleanor was my only cheerleader, proudly displaying the newspaper article on her refrigerator and bragging to everyone at church about her grandson, the baker. As I helped her in the kitchen during my senior year, I noticed her movements becoming slower, her breath more labored. When she was hospitalized with congestive heart failure 3 months before my graduation, I brought her homemade Pfeffernuss cookies, her favorite. "They're perfect, Bertie," she whispered, her German accent stronger as her energy faded. "Promise me something." "Anything, Grandma," I said, holding her thin hand. "Don't let them make you forget what makes life sweet." She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "They've forgotten, but you remember. Promise me you'll keep our traditions alive." 2 weeks later, she was gone. At the small funeral reception, I served her recipes, prepared by my hands in her kitchen, one last time before it would be emptied and sold. My parents seemed genuinely sad, but were already discussing what her house might sell for in the current market. Nathan ate 3 pieces of kuchen while scrolling through his phone. After everyone left, my mother handed me a box. "She wanted you to have these." Inside was Grandma's handwritten recipe book and her antique wooden rolling pin, worn smooth by decades of use. That night, alone in my room, I made a vow to my grandmother's memory. Someday, I would open a bakery that would honor her legacy. I didn't know then how hard the path would be, or how bitter the taste of family betrayal. My parents' expectations for my future crystallized during my senior year of high school. "We've saved for your business degree," my father announced over dinner one evening. "State University has an excellent program. With good grades, you could intern at Nathan's firm during summers." My mother nodded enthusiastically, as though my future had been pleasantly settled. I didn't have the courage yet to contradict them directly. Instead, I enrolled in the business program as expected, but immediately sought part-time work at Hoffman's Bakery, a small German-American establishment across town from campus. Old Mr. Hoffman had known my grandmother and hired me despite my lack of professional experience. "Eleanor's grandson knows how to fold dough properly," he said after watching me work for 5 minutes. "That's rarer than you'd think." For the next 4 years, I lived a double life. Mornings at the bakery starting at 4 a.m., classes during the day, studying at night, and weekends filled with shifts at Hoffman's. During my sophomore year, I added secret culinary classes at the community college to my already packed schedule, paying for them with my bakery wages and hiding the textbooks whenever my parents visited. Mr. Hoffman became my mentor, teaching me not just recipes but the business side of running a bakery, inventory management, vendor relationships, customer service, and scheduling. "A good baker knows bread," he'd say. "A successful baker knows bread and business." My graduation day should have been triumphant. I'd maintained a 3.6 GPA while working nearly full-time and completing a culinary certificate nobody in my family knew about. Instead, it became the flashpoint for the break I'd been avoiding for years. "I've got great news," my father said at my graduation dinner. "Bill Thompson at my office has a position open in their accounting department. With your business degree, you're perfectly qualified." I already put in a good word. The silence that followed his announcement stretched uncomfortably across the white tablecloth. "I'm not taking an accounting job," I finally said, setting down my fork. My father's face darkened. "What do you mean?" "This is a foot in the door at a respected firm. I'm opening a bakery." The words felt both terrifying and liberating as they left my mouth. What followed was a Category 5 family hurricane. My father's face turned crimson as he listed all the reasons this was the stupidest idea he'd ever heard. 90% of restaurants fail in the first year. You have no capital, no business experience. You'll be bankrupt before you sell your first loaf. My brother Nathan laughed outright. "A bakery? Seriously? While the rest of us are building real careers, you want to play with flour? Good luck paying back those student loans selling cookies." My mother, ever the peacemaker, tried a gentler approach. "Honey, Maybe start in the corporate world first. Build some savings, get experience. You could bake on weekends as a hobby." "It's not a hobby," I said firmly. "It's what I'm meant to do." "What you're meant to do is be practical," my father countered. "If you go down this ridiculous path, don't expect any financial help from us." 2 weeks later, I moved out of my parents' house and into a tiny studio apartment with just enough room for a bed and a small table. The rent consumed nearly half my baker's wages, but the freedom to pursue my dream was worth eating ramen noodles 4 nights a week. What followed were 3 years of hustle that tested every ounce of my determination. I continued working at Hoffman's while taking on a night job bartending and weekend gigs catering desserts for small events. My apartment became a storage unit for baking equipment I found at estate sales and restaurant auctions, professional sheet pans, a stand mixer, pastry tools all crammed into my tiny living space. Every penny not spent on absolute necessities went into my bakery fund. I tracked my progress in a notebook, watching the numbers grow painfully slowly. When Mr. Hoffman retired and sold his bakery to a chain operation, I lost both a mentor and my primary job. The new owners kept me on but eliminated most of the traditional German items in favor of mass-produced muffins and cookies. Bank after bank rejected my loan applications. No collateral, insufficient capital, limited business history, they all said in slightly different ways. My credit score was good thanks to religiously paid student loans, so I reluctantly began using credit cards to bridge the gaps in my funding. The breakthrough came through heartbreak. The rundown storefront on Lancaster Avenue had housed a laundromat for 30 years until the owner died and his children closed the business. It sat empty for months, its faded awning and dusty windows an eyesore in a neighborhood that was neither trendy nor totally abandoned, just forgotten. The realtor showed me the space without enthusiasm. Needs complete renovation. Plumbing's ancient, no hood system for commercial baking. Landlord won't pay for improvements. Where she saw problems, I saw potential. The rent was 1/3 what similar spaces cost in better areas. The large windows would showcase my displays once cleaned. Most importantly, it was available now, and after 3 years of saving, I had just enough for the security deposit and first month's rent. The lease I signed gave me 2 weeks of free rent to renovate before officially taking possession. Those 2 weeks became a blur of 18-hour days. I took unpaid leave from my jobs, sleeping on an air mattress in the back room to maximize work time. Friends from culinary school helped when they could, but most of the demolition, painting, and basic carpentry fell to me alone. I installed used equipment purchased piece by piece over the previous years. The industrial mixer needed new brushes. The refrigerator worked, but made concerning noises. The oven was the newest piece I'd splurged on it, knowing the quality of my baked goods would depend on consistent temperatures. The sign painter charged me half his usual rate after hearing my story. Eleanor's Heritage Bakery took shape in gold and deep blue lettering, with a small pretzel design that mirrored my grandmother's recipe book cover. When the sign went up, I stood across the street, staring at it for nearly an hour, exhausted but too excited to rest. Opening day arrived with little fanfare. I'd spent my last advertising dollars on simple flyers distributed around the neighborhood. At 4 a.m., I began the first official baking day in my own establishment, producing the same German specialties my grandmother had taught me alongside American classics with European twists. At 6 a.m., I unlocked the front door, heart pounding. By 7:30, exactly 3 customers had come in: an elderly man buying a single roll, a harried mother grabbing muffins for her children, and a construction worker who took a coffee and apple strudel to go. By closing time, I'd sold less than half my inventory. I wrapped the leftovers and delivered them to a nearby homeless shelter, trying not to see the day as an omen. The first month followed the same pattern: enthusiastic baking, mediocre sales, donated leftovers, and nighttime calculations that showed I was losing money each day. I cut my already modest apartment and gave up the air mattress in the back room of the bakery full-time, showering at a nearby gym to save every possible dollar. The turning point came unexpectedly. Samantha Lee, a food blogger with a modest following, happened to walk by my shop and was intrigued by the heritage in my bakery name. Her detailed post about my authentic German-American baking with modern sensibility included mouth-watering photos and my personal story. The morning after her post went live, I arrived to find 3 people waiting outside before opening. By noon, everything was sold out. The next day, the line was longer. Within 2 weeks, I established a pattern of consistently busy mornings. For the first time since opening, my daily calculations showed a small profit. As word spread, I cautiously expanded my offerings and my team. Maria became my first employee, a culinary student working part-time at the front counter. Jackson joined 3 months later as a second baker, allowing me to occasionally sleep more than 4 hours a night. We developed systems and schedules, slowly transforming my one-man operation into a functioning small business. Every milestone felt enormous. The first month we broke even, the first small profit, the day I could pay myself a tiny salary instead of living off credit cards. The morning a customer said, "I come here every day." Each victory was hard-earned and celebrated privately, since my family remained uninterested in my hobby business. When my father called on Christmas that first year, his only question about the bakery was, "Still keeping the doors open?" When I attempted to share news about a successful holiday season, he changed the subject to Nathan's promotion. My mother sent birthday cards with gift certificates to department stores so I could buy some nice clothes for when you're ready for a real job interview. I stopped trying to impress them and poured that energy into the bakery instead. As Eleanor's Heritage Bakery approached its first anniversary, the deadline my father had given for its inevitable failure, I allowed myself a moment of quiet pride. Not only had I survived, but I was beginning to thrive. The second year of business brought challenges that tested my resilience in ways different from the startup phase. A brutal winter storm caused pipes to burst in the ceiling, flooding the front of the shop and causing nearly $10,000 in damage that insurance only partially covered. I spent 3 days straight with industrial fans, replacing damaged drywall myself during closed hours to avoid paying contractors I couldn't afford. Just as we recovered from the flood, a national chain bakery opened 2 blocks away, their grand opening featuring dollar pastries and free coffee that drew crowds away from my shop for nearly a month. I responded by doubling down on what they couldn't offer: personalization, German specialties unavailable elsewhere, and the kind of customer service that included remembering regular customers' names and preferences. They might have corporate backing, but they don't have your grandmother's Black Forest cake recipe. Maria reminded me during a particularly slow afternoon as we watched people carrying the chain's branded bags walk past our windows. The competitive pressure forced innovation. I developed relationships with 3 local coffee shops to provide them with daily pastry deliveries, creating a wholesale revenue stream that stabilized our finances when walk-in traffic fluctuated. A chance conversation with a wedding planner led to our first wedding cake order, which led to more orders, which eventually necessitated a dedicated section of our production schedule just for special events. The physical toll of bakery ownership became increasingly evident. My once athletic build had softened from countless taste tests and stress, eating during long shifts. Dark circles took up permanent residence under my eyes. My doctor bluntly told me that my blood pressure and cholesterol were headed in concerning directions for someone in their late 20s. "When's the last time you took a day off?" he asked, while writing prescriptions I knew I wouldn't fill. "What day is it today?" I countered, only half joking. "Tuesday." Then it's been about 400 Tuesdays. The personal sacrifices extended beyond my health. Sarah, a regular customer who evolved into something more serious, ended our 6-month relationship with painful honesty. "I'm dating your bakery more than I'm dating you," she said over coffee, not from my shop, which should have been a warning sign. "You canceled our last 3 dates for dough emergencies. I need someone present in a relationship." I couldn't even argue with her assessment. The bakery consumed me, leaving little space for anything else. Friends stopped inviting me to gatherings after my repeated absences. I missed weddings, baby showers, and even my college roommate's funeral because stepping away for even a day felt impossible. My apartment, when I actually slept there rather than on the bakery cot, became a glorified closet where I stored the few personal items not related to baking. Despite these sacrifices, or perhaps because of them, the bakery's reputation continued to grow. During our third year, the city magazine named Eleanor's Heritage Bakery Best Specialty Bakery in their annual food issue. The award brought a new wave of customers curious about our authentic German offerings alongside creative American classics. The following spring, a regional food show featured our apple strudel in a segment about traditional European baking. The producer posted the clip online where it accumulated over 50,000 views, massive exposure for a small neighborhood establishment. Suddenly, we had tourists making special trips to try that strudel from the video alongside our loyal regulars. The increased demand stretched our small space to its limits. When the adjacent storefront became available, a failed mobile phone repair shop, I jumped at the opportunity to expand. The renovation was less frantic than the original build-out, but no less significant. We gained a proper seating area, expanded the kitchen, and created a dedicated space for special order consultations. With the physical expansion came the need for additional staff. Alexis joined us as front-of-house manager, bringing previous cafe experience that professionalized our service procedures. 2 more bakers and another counterperson rounded out the team, allowing me to occasionally step away from minute-by-minute operations to focus on business development. Year 5 brought recognition I hadn't dared dream about. Food and Wine included us in their hidden gem bakeries worth traveling for issue. The James Beard Foundation invited me to participate in a regional showcase of emerging talent. Most surreally, the German consulate in Chicago requested our pastries for their National Day celebration, citing our authentic approach to traditional recipes. Each of these milestones arrived with mixed emotions. Pride in what I'd built warred with the lingering disappointment that my family remained unimpressed. During rare holiday gatherings, my parents would politely inquire about the shop, but quickly redirect conversation to Nathan's career trajectory in investment banking. My brother himself barely acknowledged my profession, occasionally making jokes about playing with flour while helping himself to the desserts I'd brought. That banking job must be stressful. My mother once commented when Nathan snapped at her during Thanksgiving dinner. He's working with such important clients. I bit my tongue against pointing out that I typically worked 80 to 90 hours weekly while managing 10 employees and serving hundreds of customers, yet somehow maintained basic politeness. The most significant milestone arrived at the beginning of year 7. After gradually increasing payments above the minimum required, I made the final installment on the original business loan that had launched Eleanor's Heritage Bakery. The confirmation email arrived during a typical hectic morning shift. I stared at my phone in disbelief, stepping into the walk-in refrigerator for a moment of privacy as tears threatened. "We're officially debt-free," I announced to the staff at our after-hours meeting that evening. "The bakery belongs completely to us now." The impromptu celebration that followed champagne in paper cups, music on the portable speaker, spontaneous dancing between the work tables remains one of my favorite memories. These people had become more family than staff, supporting the dream when my actual family had dismissed it. As we cleaned up from our celebration, Alexis asked the question that had been forming in my own mind. "So what's next, boss? Second location? Wholesale expansion? Cookbook?" The possibilities stretched before me, exciting and a little terrifying. For 7 years, paying off the loan had been the North Star guiding every business decision. Now I could think bigger, a heritage bakery that might grow into the kind of legacy my grandmother would have been proud to see. "First, I think I'll actually take a weekend off," I said, only partially joking. "Then we'll talk expansion plans." I had no way of knowing that what's next would arrive uninvited the following Sunday afternoon in the form of my estranged family, suddenly taking interest in the business they'd spent years predicting would fail. The Sunday afternoon visit came without warning. I was in the back office reviewing supplier contracts when Maria knocked on the door frame. "There's a man out front who says he's your brother? With an older couple?" My stomach tightened immediately. In 7 years, not once had my family visited the bakery despite numerous invitations during holidays and birthdays. Their sudden appearance could only mean something significant, likely not positive, had prompted this unannounced visit. Nathan stood in the center of the shop looking strangely out of place in his designer casual wear amid the homey, rustic decor. My parents flanked him, my father examining the pastry case with analytical eyes, while my mother smiled nervously at customers. Surprise. My mother stepped forward for an awkward hug. We were in the neighborhood, and thought we'd finally see this place you've built. The neighborhood was nowhere near their suburban home, making the claim transparently false, but I played along. It's good to see you all. Let me show you around. What followed was the strangest tour I'd ever given. My father, who had once called my business plan amateur hour, now nodded approvingly at the commercial equipment. Quite an operation you've got, he commented, as though evaluating a company for potential acquisition. My mother exclaimed over every display with exaggerated enthusiasm. These look just like Eleanor's Christmas cookies. Remember how she used to make these for us, Howard? Nathan said little but took everything in with calculating eyes, occasionally typing notes into his phone. When Jackson emerged from the kitchen with a fresh tray of pretzels, Nathan peppered him with questions about production volume and customer demographics that made my baker shoot me concerned glances. The staff picked up on the tension immediately. Maria created busy work near wherever we stood, clearly eavesdropping. Alexis hovered protectively nearby, jumping in with positive commentary whenever my father made a slightly dismissive remark. Our weekend revenue has increased 30% year over year under Bert's leadership. She volunteered when my father commented that Sundays seemed moderately busy. As the awkward tour concluded, Nathan checked his watch theatrically. Why don't we continue this conversation over dinner? My treat. There's something important we'd like to discuss. The restaurant Nathan selected was exactly his style, expensive without being innovative, designed to impress corporate clients with extensive wine lists and portions too small for the price. He ordered a bottle of Cabernet without consulting anyone, then launched into unexpectedly warm reminiscences about our grandmother. Remember how she always said you had the touch for dough? He said, raising his glass in my direction. Looks like she was right after all. My father, normally reserved about anything touching on emotions, suddenly had stories about my childhood baking experiments. He was always determined. Remember that disaster birthday cake he made you when he was 9, Diane? Collapsed in the middle, but he served it anyway. My mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. Family traditions are so important. I'm just thrilled you've carried on Eleanor's legacy. Their behavior was so dramatically different from every interaction over the past decade that alarm bells rang loudly in my head. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was a prelude to something. The something emerged after our entrees arrived. So, Nathan began, setting down his fork with purpose. We've been thinking about Eleanor's Heritage Bakery as a family business opportunity. Family business? I repeated, genuinely confused. It's already established. Has been for 7 years without family involvement. That's exactly why this is the perfect time for expansion, Nathan continued smoothly. You've proven the concept works. Now it's time to scale up with proper backing and business expertise. My father nodded enthusiastically. Nathan has connections with restaurant investment groups, private equity firms looking for established local businesses with growth potential. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. You want to invest in my bakery? Now that it's successful? Not just invest, Nathan corrected. Become partners. I've drawn up a preliminary proposal. He produced a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. Essentially, I would come in as a 50% owner, bringing capital for expansion and my business development expertise. I stared at the document without opening it. 50%? Of the business I built from nothing while you all told me it would fail? My mother reached across the table to touch my hand. It's not like that, honey. We're family. Family businesses should be shared among family. Your grandmother would have wanted the whole family involved, my father added, invoking Eleanor's memory like a trump card. I finally opened the folder, scanning the legal document inside. The terms were breathtaking in their audacity. In exchange for expansion capital, an amount less than I could secure through conventional business loans with my now excellent credit, I would surrender half ownership and majority board control to a newly formed entity managed by Nathan. This isn't a partnership. It's a takeover, I said, closing the folder. Nathan's expression hardened slightly. Don't be dramatic. It's standard business structuring for capital infusion. You'd still run day-to-day operations. Under your oversight, I pointed out, with approval required for major decisions. That's just good governance, my father interjected. Nathan has the MBA and corporate experience to guide strategic direction. And I don't? Despite building a successful business from nothing? You've done well with the startup phase, Nathan conceded in a tone that made it sound like faint praise. But growth stage businesses need different expertise. Scaling requires capital relationships and strategic planning beyond local operations. The conversation devolved from there. Each time I raised an objection, they had a prepared response that circled back to the same premise that my success was somehow incomplete without their involvement. That family entitled them to ownership of what I'd built alone. As the tension escalated, the veneer of family warmth cracked, revealing the true motivations beneath. Nathan's carefully constructed pitch faltered when I pressed him on his sudden interest in baking. Let's be honest, he finally snapped after my third refusal to consider the proposal. I need this as much as you need my expertise. I've had some investment setbacks recently. Setbacks? I repeated. My father sighed heavily. Nathan's fund made some unfortunate moves in the tech sector. He's between positions at the moment. You lost your job? I looked at my brother with new understanding. And now you want half my business? He's family, my mother said emphatically. We help family through rough patches. He's always been the responsible one. That comment struck like a physical blow. After years of working myself to exhaustion building something meaningful, I was still the irresponsible child in their eyes, while Nathan, who had apparently lost his job through poor investment decisions, remained the golden child deserving of rescue. So, this isn't about helping me expand the bakery, I said slowly. It's about giving Nathan a landing pad after his failure. Don't be petty, my father said sharply. Everyone faces career challenges. Your brother has supported your unusual career choice for years. Supported? I laughed incredulously. By calling it my little hobby shop? By telling extended family I was still playing with flour while the adults handled real business? That's support? Nathan's face flushed. You're being ungrateful. I'm offering to take your little neighborhood operation mainstream. Let's be honest, you just got lucky with a food trend. Artisanal this, craft that it's all marketing. I can turn this into a real business before the trend ends. The mask had fully dropped. Around us, other diners pretended not to watch our family drama unfold while stealing obvious glances. A server approached our table, then thought better of it, retreating without taking our dessert order. My mother tried damage control. What Nathan means is that with his marketing background, he can help insulate the business from changing consumer preferences. No, I said quietly. He meant exactly what he said. This was never about family legacy or partnership. It's about taking control of something successful now that his own career has faltered. I stood up, placing my napkin beside my half-eaten meal. I think dinner is over. Thank you for finally visiting the bakery. I have a 4 a.m. start tomorrow. You're making a mistake, my father called as I walked away. Think about it at least. Family should come first. I turned back briefly. Funny how family comes first only when you want something from me. I walked out into the cool evening air, feeling simultaneously awful and strangely liberated. The family judgment I'd been seeking to overcome for years no longer mattered because it had never been about my abilities in the first place. Sleep eluded me that night as I tossed in bed, replaying the dinner confrontation from every angle. Had I overreacted? Was there merit to bringing Nathan's business experience into the bakery? Was I letting pride stand in the way of potential growth? Each question spawned doubts that multiplied in the darkness. Around 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep entirely and did what I always did when troubled. I baked. The bakery kitchen welcomed me with familiar sounds and smells as I prepared the next day's dough, finding comfort in the rhythmic motions of mixing, kneading, and shaping. As dawn approached, I found myself scrolling through old text messages from my family. The evidence of their previous dismissal was abundant. Still playing baker? Let me know when you're ready for a job reference. Nathan, 3 years earlier. The economy's improving. Good accounting positions available if you're finally tired of the food service industry. Dad, after I'd won my first major award, just checking you're coming for Christmas. Please wear something professional for the family photo, not those baker clothes. Mom, last December. Years of subtle and not so subtle undermining, followed by this sudden interest only after the bakery had proven successful and Nathan needed a safety net. The pattern was undeniable once I forced myself to see it clearly. I called David, my oldest friend from culinary school, and the only person who'd been there from the beginning of my bakery journey. Despite the early hour, he answered. "They want what now?" he exclaimed after I explained the situation. "After all that you'll fail talk for years? That's some world-class audacity. But what if turning them down means permanent estrangement?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "They're still my family. Family supports each other through the hard times," David said bluntly. "Where were they when you were sleeping on that nasty cot and living on ramen? When you burned your arm on that temperamental oven and couldn't afford a doctor visit? When you worked through pneumonia because you couldn't afford to close for a day?" His questions landed like body blows because we both knew the answer. They had been absent, dismissive, waiting for the failure they considered inevitable. Later that morning, I met with Jennifer, the attorney who had helped me with various aspects of the business over the years. She reviewed Nathan's proposal with growing indignation. "This is predatory," she said, slapping the document onto her desk. "They're using family ties to attempt a hostile takeover at a fraction of market value. If a stranger proposed these terms, you'd laugh them out of the room." "But it's my brother," I said weakly. "Which makes it worse, not better," she countered. "He's trying to leverage your family relationship to extract value you've created through years of work he contributed nothing to. Legally, you owe them nothing. Morally, same answer." That afternoon, I called an emergency staff meeting after closing. These people had become my chosen family, and their perspective mattered more than I'd previously acknowledged. "So your brother, who's never worked a day in food service, wants to come in and be your boss?" Maria summarized after I explained the situation. "Hard pass." Jackson looked uncharacteristically angry. "We've all seen you build this place brick by brick. Hell, I've worked more hours here than your brother's spent thinking about baking. Now he wants to waltz in and claim half because you share DNA?" Alexis, always the pragmatist, asked the crucial question. What would change under his partial ownership? Would we maintain our core values and quality standards? I shared what little I'd gleaned from Nathan's comments about streamlining operations and leveraging economies of scale. "That means cheaper ingredients and cutting corners," Jackson translated. "Exactly the opposite of what makes us special." Throughout the day, regular customers sensed something was wrong and asked questions that led to sharing abbreviated versions of the situation. Their responses were unanimously supportive. "I come here because it's not a chain," said William, a retired professor who spent every morning reading by our window. "Your brother sounds like he'd turn it into exactly what I avoid." Linda, who ordered our Black Forest cake for every family celebration, was more direct. "Tell him to start his own damn bakery if he's so smart." Their loyalty reinforced what I already knew. The bakery wasn't just my dream anymore. It supported employees' livelihoods and had become a community institution. What my family proposed threatened more than my personal pride. That evening, curious about Nathan's actual intentions, I did something I'd never done before. I researched my own brother online. What I discovered was illuminating. His former investment firm had parted ways with him following what financial news sites euphemistically called strategic disagreements, corporate language for being asked to leave. His LinkedIn profile had been scrubbed of specific dates, masking the 6-month employment gap. More tellingly, I found posts in his name on investment forums discussing artisanal food businesses as overvalued but cash-rich acquisition targets with potential for significant cost-cutting. In one comment from just 3 weeks earlier, he specifically called independent bakeries ripe for consolidation and artisanal baking a hipster fad with limited runway. The final piece fell into place when my cousin Tyler called, ostensibly to catch up but actually to ask awkward questions about the bakery's finances. After some prodding, he admitted Nathan had approached him about investing in a family business venture, promising significant returns once they professionalized operations and prepared for regional expansion. "He's already promising returns to investors?" I asked, incredulous. He mentioned something about replacing specialty items with centralized production to improve margins, Tyler added. Said something about keeping a few heritage items as marketing tools but streamlining the rest. The plan became crystal clear. Nathan wasn't interested in preserving what made Eleanor's Heritage Bakery special. He saw it as a successful brand to be hollowed out, leveraged, and eventually sold to the highest bidder once he'd extracted its value. The next morning, I found myself driving to the cemetery where my grandmother was buried. I hadn't visited in months, consumed by the daily demands of the bakery. Standing before her modest headstone, I felt a mixture of guilt and uncertainty. "I could use your advice right now, Grandma," I said softly, placing fresh flowers beside her grave. "They're using your name and memory to try to take what I've built." The wind rustled through nearby trees, providing no answers but somehow calming my thoughts. On impulse, I returned to the car and retrieved a small package, a loaf of traditional German rye bread I'd baked that morning using her recipe. I placed it gently beside the flowers. "I kept my promise to you," I said. "I didn't forget what makes life sweet, but I don't think they ever understood that in the first place." Walking back to my car, I noticed a small stone chapel at the edge of the cemetery grounds. Something about it called to me, and I stepped inside its cool interior. In a wooden box of memorial cards, I found my grandmother's funeral program. Tucked inside was a folded, yellowed letter I'd never seen before. A letter from my grandmother to her brother in Germany, written decades ago but never sent. The handwritten German was difficult to decipher, but my years of studying the language to better understand her recipes helped me translate enough to understand its significance. She wrote about her brother's attempt to claim ownership of her first small bakery in America, his belief that a woman couldn't succeed in business without a man's guidance, and her painful decision to sever ties rather than surrender control of what she'd built. "Blood matters," she'd written, "but so does respect. Family that cannot see your worth until after you've proven it to the world is not family that deserves the fruits of your labor." It was as though she'd written the words specifically for this moment, this decision. The parallel was uncanny. Her brother then, my brother now, both attempting to claim what they hadn't helped build. She had stood firm. The question was whether I would do the same. Driving back to the bakery, my path became clear. This wasn't about being unforgiving or holding grudges. It was about honoring the true heritage of Eleanor's bakery, not just her recipes, but her principles of self-reliance and refusing to be undervalued. I spent the remainder of the day with Jennifer, documenting the bakery's history, my sole ownership, and the years of building without family support or involvement. We gathered evidence of my brother's previous dismissive comments from texts and emails, his recent job loss, and his discussions with potential investors about changing the bakery's fundamental character. By evening I had two things: a comprehensive legal response to their proposal, and the emotional clarity to deliver it in person, whatever the consequences for future family relationships. I chose the setting for our final confrontation deliberately, the bakery itself, after closing hours. If my family wanted to claim ownership of this space, they should see exactly what that meant, beyond profit margins and expansion opportunities. Alexis helped me prepare the space, setting up the largest work table with chairs and a deliberate display. Along one wall, we arranged a chronological photo documentation of the bakery's creation and growth. The empty storefront on day one, my bloodied hands after demolition work, sleeping on the cot during renovation, the first tiny holiday rush, award ceremonies, staff celebrations, and community events. In the center of the table, I placed my grandmother's rolling pin, the physical manifestation of the heritage that gave the bakery its name and purpose. My attorney Jennifer waited in her car outside, available by text if needed, but giving me space to handle this family matter personally first. When my family arrived, they seemed taken aback by the setting. They had clearly expected another restaurant meeting, neutral territory where business could be discussed abstractly. Instead, they found themselves in the heart of what they sought to control. "I thought we'd meet where it all happens," I explained, gesturing for them to sit, since we're discussing the future of this space. My father eyed the photos with a slight frown. My mother looked uncomfortable, perhaps recognizing moments from my life she had missed entirely. Nathan quickly recovered from his surprise and took charge of the conversation. "We've given you a few days to consider our proposal," he began, placing a leather portfolio on the table. "I've made some adjustments based on your concerns. The equity split could be revised to 60-40 initially, with performance metrics to protect everyone's interests." He pushed the portfolio toward me, but I left it untouched. "I've arranged meetings with 2 restaurant groups interested in our expansion concept," he continued, undeterred by my silence. "One has experience taking local brands regional, the other specializes in food service franchising. Both see significant potential in the Eleanor's Heritage brand." "That's not what we do here," I said quietly. "Not yet," Nathan corrected. "But with proper scaling—" "No," I interrupted more firmly. "That's not what Eleanor's Heritage Bakery is or will ever be." My father cleared his throat. "Son, I understand you're protective of what you've built. That's natural, but family businesses thrive through evolution and growth. Your grandmother would want—" "Please don't tell me what she would want," I said, my voice tight with emotion. "She taught me to bake. She encouraged me when you all dismissed it. She's the heritage in this bakery's name, not a marketing tool for expansion plans. No one's suggesting changing the essence of the place," my mother interjected soothingly, "just bringing in family support to help it reach its potential." "Let's be clear about one thing," I responded. "This isn't about family support. This is about Nathan needing a new revenue stream after losing his job." Nathan's face flushed. "That's a temporary situation. I have multiple opportunities in the pipeline. Then pursue those instead of trying to take half of what I've built." "We're your family," my father said, his voice hardening. "You owe us some consideration after all we've invested in your upbringing and education." "I've considered it very carefully," I replied, pulling out a folder of my own. "I've documented every stage of building this business. Would you like to see the hours I worked while sleeping on a cot in the back room? The credit card debt I took on when no bank would give me a loan? The medical bills from when I couldn't afford health insurance, but couldn't afford to stop working either?" I spread photographs across the table, images they'd never seen before. Me with bandaged hands from renovation work. The tiny first Christmas display I'd created while running a fever of 103 degrees. The burst pipe damage I'd repaired myself because I couldn't afford contractors. "This is what building something from nothing looks like," I continued. "Not one of you offered help. Not one of you showed up." I pulled out printed copies of text messages and emails, laying them beside the photos. "Here's you, Dad, telling me I was throwing away my education by playing shopkeeper instead of using my business degree properly. Here's you, Nathan, joking at Thanksgiving dinner that my cookie business was a nice hobby while real men built careers. Here's you, Mom, sending me job listings for accounting positions 3 years after I'd won my first major industry award." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were just worried about you. We wanted security for you." "No," I corrected gently. "You wanted me to follow a path you understood and approved of. When I chose differently, you withdrew support and waited for failure that never came." Nathan attempted to regain control of the conversation. "The past is irrelevant. Business decisions should be forward-looking. The fact remains that, with my connections and your baking, we could create something much larger than this neighborhood shop." "That's exactly the problem," I said. "You see a neighborhood shop that needs to be something else. I see the fulfillment of a promise to the only family member who believed in me from the beginning." I pushed the legal folder toward them. "My attorney has prepared a formal response to your proposal. The answer is no. Not 60-40, not 70-30. No partnership of any kind." "You can't be serious," my father sputtered. After all you've done?" I repeated, my composure finally cracking. "What exactly have you done for this bakery? For me, you predicted failure, mocked my choice, and disappeared during the hardest years. Now you want half because it succeeded despite your predictions." I stood up, placing both hands flat on the table. "This bakery was built with hands you claimed would never create anything worthwhile. These recipes were perfected during nights you thought I was wasting my life. This team came together when my actual family couldn't be bothered to visit even once in 7 years." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the refrigerators seemed to quiet their hum as my words hung in the air between us. "I do have a counteroffer," I finally continued. "If you want to be involved with Eleanor's Heritage Bakery, you can apply for jobs like anyone else. We occasionally need counter help on weekends. Starting pay is $15 an hour plus tips. Employee discount on pastries." Nathan's face contorted with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You can't be serious. I have an MBA from Wharton. I've managed portfolios worth millions. And I have 7 years of proven success building this business without your help," I replied evenly. "Your credentials mean nothing here if you don't understand what makes this place special." My father stood abruptly. "This is outrageous. You're letting emotion cloud business judgment. We're trying to help you." "No," I said with quiet certainty. "You're trying to help yourselves to what I've built now that it's valuable. There's a difference." Nathan gathered his materials with jerky movements, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You'll regret this. When some corporate chain moves in across the street and undercuts you, or when the next food trend makes German baking passé, you'll wish you had taken this opportunity." "Maybe," I acknowledged. "But it will have been my choice. My success or my failure, not a takeover disguised as family concern." As Nathan stormed toward the door, I saw something I hadn't witnessed since we were children, my brother in tears. Not from sadness, but from thwarted entitlement, from the shocking reality that his assumed superiority had failed to deliver what he wanted. My father followed, placing a hand on my shoulder briefly before leaving. The gesture contained a complicated mix of anger, disappointment, and perhaps a reluctant respect I hadn't seen before. My mother lingered, torn between her sons. "Family should stick together," she said weakly. "I agree," I replied. "But family goes both ways. It's not something you invoke only when you want something." After they left, I sat alone in the bakery that had become more home than any place I'd lived, surrounded by the evidence of years of work they had never valued, until it became profitable. The sense of loss mingled strangely with profound relief, as though I'd finally put down a heavy burden I hadn't realized I was carrying. I texted Jennifer a simple message: "It's done." Then I began preparing dough for tomorrow's bread, finding comfort in the familiar motions that had sustained me through every other challenge. The weeks following the confrontation brought a strange emotional hangover. Despite knowing I'd made the right decision, I experienced unexpected waves of guilt and doubt. Had I been too harsh? Too unforgiving? The questions circled through my mind during quiet moments between batches of bread and customer interactions. The first major holiday after our fallout, Thanksgiving, loomed with particular dread. For years, I'd maintained minimal contact with my family but still participated in obligatory gatherings. This year, no invitation came. Instead of relief, I felt a hollow ache that surprised me with its intensity. Maria noticed my distraction as we prepared special holiday offerings. "You're allowed to miss them even if they were wrong," she said simply, continuing to shape dinner rolls without looking up. "Is that what this feeling is?" I asked. "Families are complicated," she shrugged. "Mine stopped speaking to me for 2 years when I dropped out of law school to attend culinary instead. Now my mom brags about me to her friends. People can change." "Not all people," I countered. "No," she agreed. "But missing the possibility of what could have been is still valid." Instead of spending Thanksgiving alone dwelling on family fractures, I accepted Alexis's invitation to join her extended family gathering. Surrounded by her boisterous siblings, parents, and assorted relatives who treated me as an honored guest chef, I experienced a different model of family, one built on mutual support and celebration of each person's unique contributions. "Sorry Uncle Rick keeps asking you for baking tips," Alexis apologized as her elderly uncle cornered me for the 3rd time with questions about sourdough fermentation. "Don't apologize," I said sincerely. "He's genuinely interested in what I do. That's refreshing." The contrast between their warm curiosity and my own family's years of dismissal illuminated what had been missing: not just support for my career choice, but basic respect for my passion and abilities. As the bakery entered its 8th year, I made structural changes that reflected personal growth beyond the business itself. I hired 2 additional full-time bakers and a dedicated event coordinator, creating a staffing buffer that allowed something revolutionary: scheduled days off. After nearly 8 years of constant presence, I began taking Mondays completely away from the bakery. The first Monday off felt like playing hooky from school, exhilarating and mildly terrifying. I silenced my phone and spent the entire day hiking at a nearby state park, allowing my mind to wander without production schedules or inventory orders intruding. By the third Monday, the anxiety had diminished. By the second month, I looked forward to these restorative breaks. With deliberately created space in my life, social connections became possible again. I joined a community garden project, volunteering monthly to help maintain plots that supplied local food pantries. The simple act of growing things without commercial pressure reawakened joy in working with my hands. At one garden workday, I met Ashley, a children's librarian who approached baking with enthusiastic amateurism. Our conversation began with her apologizing for her disastrous attempts at croissants and evolved into coffee, then dinner, then a relationship built on mutual respect for our different passions. Unlike previous relationships strained by my work schedule, Ashley appreciated my dedication while gently encouraging balance. "I love how much you care about your work," she told me after visiting the bakery during a busy morning rush. "The way you mentor your staff, remember regulars' orders, maintain quality during chaos, it's impressive. But I also love seeing you exist outside those bakery walls." 6 months after the confrontation with my family, an unexpected visitor arrived at the bakery just before closing. My mother stood awkwardly near the door, examining display cases with careful attention to avoid meeting my eyes directly. "We're about to close," I said, neither welcoming nor dismissive. "But I can wrap something up for you if you'd like." "I didn't come for pastries," she replied softly. "I came to talk, just me, if you're willing." We sat at a corner table while staff cleaned around us, their curious glances poorly disguised. My mother looked older than I remembered from our last encounter, new lines etched around her eyes and mouth. "Your father and I are in counseling," she began, surprising me with her directness. "After what happened, it forced some difficult conversations about how we've treated you over the years, how we favored Nathan's path and dismissed yours." "That's unexpected," I managed. "I keep thinking about your grandmother," she continued. "How proud she would be of what you've created here, and how disappointed she would be in how little we supported you along the way." Tears formed in her eyes. "I can't undo the past. But I wanted you to know, I'm sorry, truly sorry. You deserved better from your family." The apology, so long awaited yet now unexpected, left me momentarily speechless. I offered her a napkin for her tears, buying time to process my response. "Thank you for saying that," I finally replied. "It means something to hear it." "Nathan's moved to Boston," she added. "He's working for a financial services company there. Your father and he aren't really speaking right now." I nodded, unsurprised that family fractures had extended beyond my relationship with them. "And Dad? Does he share your perspective?" "He's working on it," she admitted. "He's a proud man who doesn't easily admit mistakes. But seeing this place, what you've built, it's made him question some long-held assumptions." We talked for nearly an hour, the conversation awkward but genuine. No magical reconciliation occurred, but a door creaked open that had seemed permanently closed. As she prepared to leave, she hesitated. "Would it be all right if I visited occasionally? Just as a customer, no expectations." "The bakery's open to everyone," I said, then added more gently, "including you." 2 weeks later, a brief email arrived from my father. Just 3 sentences. "Your mother showed me pictures of the bakery. Very impressive operation. You've proven me wrong." Not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement that represented significant movement for a man who had never admitted error in my lifetime. Nathan remained conspicuously silent. Through family grapevine, I heard he occasionally made dismissive comments about artisanal food trends fading, but had stopped claiming any connection to my business. The space between us remained vast, but I no longer felt the acute pain of his judgment or craved his approval. With emotional burdens lightened, I channeled energy into the bakery's evolution. The success of Eleanor's Heritage Bakery had created financial stability that allowed expansion in directions that honored both quality and community rather than just pursuing profit. We opened a second, smaller location across town that specifically highlighted my grandmother's traditional German recipes, creating a complementary rather than competing business. The new space included a dedicated teaching kitchen where we offered baking classes to community members. Most meaningfully, I established an apprenticeship program specifically designed for young people without family support, offering training, mentorship, and pathways to culinary careers for those whose talents might otherwise go undeveloped. Each year, 2 paid apprentices learned both baking techniques and business management, carrying forward both skills and values. The shop's community impact extended further as we created a comfortable gathering space where people connected over shared food. Book clubs met in our corner nook. New parents found sanctuary during morning coffee hours. Elderly neighbors established regular tables where they received both nourishment and companionship. The wall near our entrance became home to a photo chronicle of our journey from the empty storefront to present day that new customers often asked about. Explaining the story became a staff tradition, with each employee adding their own perspective on when they joined the bakery's extended family. As I reflected on the tumultuous path to this point, certain lessons crystallized with the clarity that only time and distance provide. Family extends beyond blood relations. The people who stand beside you during struggles often create stronger bonds than those forged merely through genetic connection. My staff, loyal customers, and friends who believed in my vision had become my chosen family, supporting me when biological relatives couldn't or wouldn't. Success reveals people's true characters. Those who dismissed my dream when it seemed impractical suddenly discovered its value once proven viable. Their delayed interest revealed more about their values than their belated recognition showed support. Authenticity outlasts trends. Nathan's assessment of artisanal baking as a passing fad fundamentally misunderstood what made Eleanor's Heritage Bakery successful. We weren't chasing trends but honoring traditions while making them relevant to contemporary tastes, creating something with staying power beyond market fluctuations. Sometimes bridges must burn for new ones to be built. The painful confrontation with my family, while traumatic, cleared space for healthier relationships both with them and with others who entered my life afterward. The temporary destruction allowed for reconstruction on stronger foundations. Above all, I understood finally what my grandmother had tried to tell me years before. Don't let them make you forget what makes life sweet wasn't just about baking techniques or recipes. It was about maintaining vision and values even when others couldn't see their worth, about creating something authentic rather than following paths determined by others' expectations. Eleanor's Heritage Bakery had become more than a business. It was a living testament to the power of pursuing passion with integrity, of building community around shared values, and of creating legacy through daily acts of creation and connection. Each morning as I shaped dough with hands now marked by years of work, I felt my grandmother's presence in the familiar motions. The bakery had become the vessel for continuing traditions, while creating new ones, a bridge between heritage and future that wouldn't have existed had I followed the safer path my family once insisted upon. What do you think, Grandma Eleanor? I sometimes whispered to the empty kitchen before opening. Did I keep my promise? The answer always came in the same form: the rich aroma of baking bread, the warmth of ovens, and the knowledge that I had indeed remembered what makes life truly sweet. What about you? Have you ever had to protect something you built from people who didn't support you until after you succeeded? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need encouragement to stand firm in their own journey. Thanks for listening. And remember, sometimes the family that matters most is the one you build around your passion, not just the one you're born into.